It's recording.
Okay, it's recording, guys. Goodbye. It's recording. It's recording.
All right, thank you. Don't say nothing bad about me.
Okay.
Because I'll hear it.
You're in trouble, Tom. Why? Is it full?
No, when Herman Clancy was here, we had that water shortage, and he talked the school district into draining it. Yeah, so see,
So is it still there?
Mhm.
Is it salvageable?
well, you know, they just did a bunch of work in there, but I doubt they did anything to it.
That's too bad. We should,
Yeah,
they should do something.
so,
Okay, we start with our work session. You don't have to do roll call until your regular meeting, so we'll go right into it.
I'd like to call to order the work session of Trinidad Tourism Board at 9:01. Items of discussion. Website. Christie, how are you?
Hi, good morning. How are you guys?
Good, good, and you?
I'm very excited to present to you a thing this morning that we're gonna do a big reveal here in about 2 seconds.
Okay.
So yeah, I do want to talk to you about the website just briefly, but first, do you all remember this?
Mm-hmm.
So it's done.
It's all done, huh?
And so let's
I don't wanna, what was that?
I want to. That's the walking tour.
The walking tour.
It's updated?
It's updated. So
Wow.
each of you, I would like for you to scan this QR code with your phones. So you basically would get that, pick that up. I have one for you too, Mayor. And then tell me what you see.
Sonic building?
Mm-hmm. And
Spiritually 31.
so each of you will have.
I didn't do anything, hold on,
Yeah, you're.
I'm having trouble.
Oh, you're good. I can. It should pop up just kind of a little bubble, and you click on it. And so basically, what this is this guide, and Marty and
Can I
I.
have the guy that's not doing anything? A little bubble.
Yep, little bubble. Just press on the bubble, and it'll take you to the. Let's see if I can.
Man, the tours have a new tool
Give me
to
that.
use in
Yes,
Trinidad
ma'am.
now.
Oh, this or
That's awesome of that
yeah.
storefront
Yeah.
of the old James.
Oh my
Isn't that
gosh,
cool?
yeah. So
That's so
what you all
cool.
have, sorry, I won't stand so close. What you all will have is, so I was able to put the tourism board logo in there. So that's good because immediately when the person pulls it up, and if you click on the logo, it takes them to our website. But also, so these recordings were something that I think I started last summer, and did all the editing and tried to stay very, very true to this because this is copyrighted by the Trinidad Historical Society. And we did get their permission to do this audio tour, but wanted to stay true to it, and it's phenomenal. If you all haven't read through this thing,
It is,
he
isn't
did
it?
such a good job. And
It's like a catalog of so many different
It
buildings.
is.
It's just really
Yeah.
cool.
it is, so basically, so this is available on the web as well as on mobile. And so, and there will be a rendition of it on the website.
I would love to see like that QR code and some sort of marketing
Yes.
material, like in the hotels.
Yes.
So I can say, go take the downtown,
Yes.
dude,
So
just
side-
shoot it before you leave here.
Exactly.
Plaques with it on it?
I'm sorry?
Like plaques?
Yeah,
So
so
you could
what,
be in front of a building and do the
Yeah.
QR code and find out about it?
exactly, and that's what I was thinking, so, if you all, I was sort of thinking like, well, how would they disseminate this information that this is a thing? And as people are walking around town, kind
Yeah.
of experiencing the town, and yeah, for each stop, there's a separate QR code. So like, for example, in the Los Animas building where you are, Camilla, if you wanted to have the QR code for the Los Animas building there in your shop, you could say, hey, you wanna check out some history about the Los Animas building, or in City Hall, City Hall is on the tour as well. And so any one of these buildings on the stop has a separate QR code, and there could be just a quick little kind of, hey, you want to check this out, and then they have the option to continue on the entire tour or continue on just a few stops, kind of whatever strikes their fancy. So
Years ago, we had a poster that this is when QR codes were out, but everybody was scared.
no one knew what they were.
We're like, we had posters around town that were about that big,
Yeah.
that had all the QR codes, but it was like,
Yeah, I don't know what
so
to
we
do.
were used to them all,
Yeah.
but now,
Right. Well, and I noticed too, I think the technology's come a long way, because when I was testing each of the QR codes, you know, my camera barely got a glimpse of the code and it popped up immediately. It used to be like you had to
Yeah.
focus in, and it's not that way anymore, so.
What's nice about this too is we're always looking for pictures, photos to advertise. You know, when we do our advertisements in different magazines.
Yep.
Like this one you have here, the Colombian of a
Oh
long
my
time
gosh,
ago.
isn't that a beautiful picture?
And then you go inside and see that bar.
Yes, the saloon.
That bar is,
Yeah.
that saloon is so cool.
It's incredible, and I am still, that's the one thing that I am still working on, is gathering more historic photos, because ideally, there's at least one accompanying each modern photo, so that people can kind of get that juxtaposition.
That's awesome.
So that's the one thing, and I am, you know, for the foreseeable future, gonna continue working on, the audio tour, so.
And so is this, are there any buildings that were taken out or added since the walk through Trinidad was originally published?
No, so the one, well, so there was one that was taken out, but that's because it was bulldozed to the ground, and that's the Packer building. But that's the only one that was taken out. So everything else is in here.
Yeah.
So, and Marty did, we went through the text to edit, like, for example, the Firehouse #1 is no longer a children's museum. And in here it's stated as such. So we wanted to make sure we're giving people an accurate depiction of what to expect. So we did remove things like that, but really, really tried to stay true to the text. And you'll notice too, at the beginning of the tour and at the end, there are credits. So basically that's crediting, you know, this is brought to you on behalf of the Trinidad Tourism Board. And then also crediting Gerald H. Stokes with his writing, and also crediting, thanking the Trinidad Historical Society for letting us do this, basically. So trying to acknowledge the different parties that were involved, and then those that were involved in the editing, and then those that were involved in the production, so that people kind of have the full context. So that's at the beginning and the end, because in case someone misses it at the beginning, we have it at the end, and vice versa. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. It's been my pleasure. So.
This just lets us know our money's being well spent.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I'm excited about marketing it at the hotel, you know, it's an
Huge.
easy thing for, you know, you always try to have the front desk girls, and you're always educating them on what to say to people that
Listen
come
to
in.
this.
Because we're always trying to send them downtown,
Right.
and then for them to have a tool like that. Shoot it, then go downtown and take the tour.
Yeah, definitely. And that kind of leads me into kind of my next. So I am still, if you all get feedback from people, like one thing to remember is this is the guide, right? So this is not something that we wrote. This was already kind of approved by the Trinidad Historical Society, and this was published. But also, if there are you know, points of clarification or anything, feel free to just shoot me an email directly, and we can look at adjusting that. Like Marty and I will dialogue about that, because we've kind of been doing that as we went. I've been reaching out to certain people like, hey, you know, I know you know about this structure, like what do you think about this? Is it still an accurate kind of depiction of this, you know, because we want to make sure we're putting that out there. So whatever feedback there is, you can just send it right to me, and I'll address it.
Who have you been working with, I don't know who's on current Historical Society for Trinidad?
So the Historical Society, we basically reached out last spring to them. I had reached out to Loretta because I wanted to get a blurb written about Gerald H. Stokes, as well as a summary of the Trinidad Historical Society for the website. For when we put a reference to this on the website. I'm really big on like crediting people,
Right.
and this is a phenomenal resource. So I reached out to her. I haven't been able to connect with her yet, but last year Marty had reached out to get permission, and just basically to say, hey, this is the thing we want to do. Is this okay with you? So.
Yeah.
So because it's all digital, then it's also sort of living, breathing, right? So you can add pieces, and you know, if there were stories that people had that were anecdotal, you could put those in.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it would be very cool to invite people to kind of participate in that. And you know, we probably would want to have a process for like actually there is a story in here. I left it in, but I reached out to Wally actually, because I was like, hey, like, what do you think about how does this passage sound? You know, because some of the terminology too. It's like the first copyright for this was in like 1987 or something, and things have changed a bit. You know, so we want to be like with the times. You know, but also being true to text. So I reached out to him and there's a particular anecdote in there and I was like, did that actually happen? You know, and he's like, I mean, unless it's proven otherwise, you know, like, because so many of these things are just stories that have been passed down, you know, and that's one of the beautiful things about this, and I think Cy probably knows from reading it, is just the stories in here are
Right.
amazing.
Well, Jerry Stokes, didn't we name our airport after him?
No,
there?
that's Perry.
Oh, Perry.
Perry
Were they brothers or something,
No.
Jerry and Perry?
Jerry,
I mean, it's kind of unusual.
Gerald-
this guy, he came
Gerald-
from Texas.
Yeah, and he
Yeah.
lived in, used to deliver to him, he lived in Bon Carbo.
Carbo.
He had the coolest house,
Did he?
and I think his wife was in a wheelchair. But I used to visit with him, but where he lived at was really cool. And Perry Stokes, he lived in El Moro, and they raised chickens
Oh, that's
in
cool.
El Moro. They had this huge barn where they raised chickens at,
Is that why
and
they,
it's still
is
standing.
that what they named the airport, like
He-
they had property
he-
there or something?
No, he just worked at the airport for years and years.
You ran the
He
airport.
ran the airport, he was the
Yeah.
manager
Oh,
of the
okay.
airport.
Yeah.
Cool.
So,
Cool.
and if you go into the airport, it's like going into 1950.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I love
I
it.
love
It's
it.
really cool, yeah.
Yeah, that's
I
really
love
cool.
our airport.
That's very cool.
So some of the changes that we had to make
Yeah.
were like to the Galleria, cause that's new.
Yep.
So we added the Galleria, but we kept the history of it,
Yep.
what, the building that was there. We changed the text on the Children's Museum.
Yeah, we had to change.
There were a couple of, notations on the underground, the tunnels.
Yeah.
So we had to work on that a little bit, because in the book it said you can see it and access it, and that's not
That's no
true
longer
anymore,
the
so we
case
had
for
to
a long
change that.
time.
So we
There's
went
only
in
one-
and,
There's only one building you can access,
right, we had to change the Champions
Is it the
building,
West Block?
the West Block.
West Block.
And my uncle owned the Frank Block, which is part of this new one. And there was all the storefronts in the front of that one. I remember going through it as a kid.
So cool.
Yeah.
Well, if you wanna know the history of it, the one West Block, the only reason it was saved is because we put a health club downstairs and they were filling in the street.
And they were like,
me,
it's a business.
My husband and John and Gina Ray went before the city and said, please do not fill that in because we
Yeah.
are putting a health
Wow.
department, a health
Yeah.
exercise place downstairs.
See, that's a story.
And
Yeah.
they saved it and we took the steps off the behind the back of the building and put them in front.
And that was what, 30 years ago?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I would
35.
imagine 35, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we went before the city and asked them not to put the
That's
cover
cool.
in, they said,
Well, I'm glad you did.
and they
Yeah.
saved it, and we had a health club down there for many years.
Now just
Before
raccoons
skateboard jumped in.
reside down there.
Yeah.
So it was a great place for a while.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Cool.
To have a tour. To
Yeah,
go-
to do tunnel
Well, I
tours,
remember there was.
talk about,
That's
storage of
amazing.
booze down there and all that
Yeah.
crazy
Yeah.
things.
Well, and even just, like, I wrote a thing for the Goat Head Festival earlier this year, and I wound up going through the history of Trinidad from basically its inception, and, just when the tunnels were first being built, like in Victorian times, just to avoid the hubbub of the streets, like, I can't even imagine. They had skylights,
It was amazing downstairs,
Yeah.
when you could see all the way
Yeah.
down there when we were very sad to see them fill in. We were
Yeah,
very
I
heartbroken.
believe it.
Was but we were glad we saved those 3 storefronts
Yeah.
down there, yeah,
Yeah, it's a big deal, because that's the only remaining example.
yeah.
So, that's a huge deal.
Unless someday.
And we went before the city and they just openly said yes, they didn't even blink an eye.
That's
Cool.
so sweet, and
That's
thanks Christy
very cool.
for your
Yeah.
hard work getting it done, thanks
Yeah.
Harvey for.
Thank you.
It
Okay,
was fun, we had a good time.
Yeah, we did,
Yeah.
we did.
It
Yeah, and
was
it's,
stressful at times, but
Yeah,
all in
yeah.
all, it was pretty good.
yeah, it was, there were times when I was like, oh, should we, but.
So do you have a plan on how to communicate that this exists?
Yeah, so, well, I really think, what we were just talking about, one of the biggest ways is just gonna be getting marketing materials out there where you have at the library, and you have at City Hall, all the different stops. Like, hey, and then having Trinidad Tourism Board branding on there so that they know who is responsible. Because that's one thing, is like, if someone wants to learn more, I see a lot of interesting things happening a lot of times around town, but it's not necessarily very clear, like, who to talk to.
What about the plaques that exist now in front of some of these buildings?
He did that.
Yeah.
Jerry Stokes did.
Yeah, but is there a way that we could put a QR code on the pole maybe of that?
Sure, I mean, I don't know.
Well, our
what do you
plan
think?
originally was
Because it
just a
sits on a pole
was just as simple as putting a QR code in the window of the building that we're
Yeah.
talking about.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's,
Well, and I
That's the
also, too, if
initial
you go
plan.
to the merchants and have them, I'm taking mine to my desk.
Yeah.
And if they wanna see it, they can just touch their QR code.
Yeah.
And I think if we
That's
just
a good
put
idea.
it on a thicker piece of paper than what you have, maybe an index card,
Card stock.
because I am gonna tape it to the thing, and if
Yeah.
anybody asks, they could dump it.
Yeah, and I think if you go, a lot of people are gonna go to the plaque before they go to the window. So if you put it on those,
If you could get like these kinds of things created, not just on metal, that you could then adhere next to the
there you
plaque,
go.
and then they would last through the weather.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And people could do them. I
Yeah,
don't think those are
that's
too
good.
expensive to have made.
Yeah,
We could do
yeah,
that for you.
the like to have the plaques remade is
Right.
on the
Well, I
architecture
think
board right now.
she has a good idea with this, and then we could just place that on the pole of each one of those,
Victor,
Something
just to
like
give
this.
There you
Victor
go.
credit, yeah,
Yeah,
just
something
to
like
give
that.
Victor
Yeah.
credit. Victor
It's
spent a
waterproof.
lot of time and looking
So it's
for grant
waterproof?
money about 8
Something on
years
metal.
ago to have them all redone, cause you
Yeah.
couldn't read some of them.
Yeah,
Some of
And
these
I
are
was
metal,
really
some of
proud
them
of
are
plastic.
plastic.
it's,
This is
yeah,
a one guy show,
It's-
it's really.
yeah, Victor's,
Yeah.
oh, he totally is a one
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah, because it was like out of his realm of things he had to do, but
Yeah.
he got the money and redid those plaques so they could be readable.
Yeah.
Some of them weren't readable.
And I wanna just address what, finish answering kind of Dawn's question. So, one thing just for you all to know, and it's actually, basically done, but, I wrote a SIPA grant earlier last year, right? Yes. And it's only February. And got that money, to digitize this. So, like beyond the audio tour, which was already in progress, but so those monies are going to go towards putting this on the website, and it's actually already on the website. And it just remains to be published. Along with that, and this pertains to you and Marty's conversation last week, Tom, about the 360-degree virtual tours.
Mhm.
That is also going to be on that page. So,
Awesome.
so basically there's, and I'm working with, Carlos Madrid, here in town. He has a virtual reality camera. So, so we're getting just a few snapshots, a few what they call cubes, for that. So that will be on the page along with links to this.
Okay.
So that's gonna be a really good tool for disseminating the information as well, and driving people to your website, so.
Thanks, Christy.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you.
And I, just one other thing, so, and that does kind of bring me to the next, the actual website, aspect of the discussion. So, I am, needing to step down as the web developer for the website, unfortunately. So, but fantastic news is, so when I first talked with Marty about this, she and I were kind of thinking like, well, we wanna kind of,
Continue.
yeah, well, and also just make sure that we're setting you all up, you know, to still have consistency, because I know last time there was a transition, it was like multiple months when no one was able to work on it, right? So, so we actually, there's someone in our midst who has, the requisite skill sets, and also you actually have my letter of recommendation for her in your packet. And that is Miss Sarah over here. And this is the letter of recommendation, if you all wanted to take a peek. And so I'd like to read it to you if it's okay with you.
Go ahead.
Okay, so this letter is to serve as my recommendation of Sarah Dixon as the web designer and developer to replace me in my role as a contract web designer developer on the Visit Trinidad website as of February 15, 2022. Sarah is the ideal candidate for this role as she already possesses web development design experience, is a resident of Trinidad, so understands what is happening in and around the community, is already employed by the city in a role heavily involving communications, and also already handles city and tours and board related social media under the guidance of Marty Hackett. So they already have a working relationship that is, I think, healthy and good. So she is also employed part-time at the library, which will soon have its own WordPress website, with which she may also be assisting. Given her level of involvement in various municipal and community matters, she is uniquely positioned to have knowledge of different aspects of civic and community life in Trinidad that will lend itself well to maintaining the tourism website, which should provide a holistic view of our diverse community. For all of these reasons, Sarah is the best person to step into this role upon my departure, in my opinion, as both a community member and fellow web designer developer. Thank you for your attention in this matter, and for the opportunity to work with you all on this site that serves to enrich the understanding and appreciation of Trinidad for both residents and visitors alike. It has been a genuine pleasure and privilege. Thanks, Christy, for that.
Thank you.
Where are you going?
Oh, I'm staying here. I'm starting a full-time job and I'm also gonna be helping my family back home with some things and I need to be working on that. So yeah, so I'll still be around and that's why I kept saying the audio tour is something I can still kind of work on because that's not, the website is actually starting to take more and more time. Just in terms of more things happening to talk about, you know, and more things happening that we want to keep people updated on. And it is a really good tool for that. So I feel like it's in the best interest of the site to have someone that can be here 100% of the time.
I agree with you.
So that's kind of, that's
The only question I have about that is, this would be a question for you, Sarah, is that being that you are employed, for the city of Trinidad
Yes.
in a couple of different capacities, is that you're not going to get overwhelmed with this particular, taking on this additional job.
From what I've understood since Chris proposed this to me, it's, a limited amount of hours per month. It's more on a freelance basis, and so with my work in economic development and at the library, I think I can juggle that outside of it. I have sort of a flexible schedule. With economic development, I'm not always set at a desk, all day long, and it changes because social media and communications is anytime and not just from 9 to 5. So I think I could definitely take it on, and I have a working relationship with Marty, and I've run your social media already. So, and also I had a question for you, Christy, unrelated. But whenever the walking tour is ready to be published and disseminated, to the public, I can certainly make sure that's on our Facebook, Instagram.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that would be, that's what we would do anyway,
Yeah.
if I was still, so yeah.
If you want it in the newsletter, economic development newsletter, that's a good thing to highlight. So
Yep.
just let me know when that's ready.
Definitely, yep, I can
I
do it.
really want to bring up that question, it's so easy that, with what Mike is having to do is, when we have employees, it just seems like more and more additional duties come on
So creep.
to the employees, and I just don't want that to
Yeah.
start creating an issue, so we're.
Yeah. We talked about like 10 hours a month.
Yeah,
ish.
that's generally the expectation, that's been the case, and occasionally it's like if there's a big event or something that needs more, like we'll do that, or troubleshooting, that happens sometimes, but most of the time it's, between 10 and 15 for sure.
Yeah,
It's kind of like Marty, all the hats she wears.
Well, and part of the thing too, part of my thought was because Sarah is already in the mode of communicating and disseminating information, this in a way will be even more streamlined because it will be one less person in the mix, to be doing those communications.
And her position, Mayor, is also a contracted position,
Right.
it's not as a city employee.
Right.
I think that is a good way to go, being that she's our communications coordinator.
Right.
Yeah, it makes sense. She's already kind of doing a lot of the work that would be entailed.
So that is on your regular, meeting to approve Sarah moving, stepping into Christie's shoes. So you'll see that on the agenda later on.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, feel free to let me know about any questions that come up about this. And like I said, this is still something I'm going to continue working on. And I'll let you all know once it's up on the website so you can check it out, because I'm also doing portfolios of different historical photos too. So it'll be pretty exciting. So
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you, Christie.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Thank you.
Sarah, did you have anything else that you wanted to add? No?
I think she covered all of it. Yeah.
CTO Tourism Management Grant, Jared.
Jared wasn't able to make it, but
He's
Samantha's
outside
here. He's got another meeting,
He's got another meeting.
Yeah. so I double booked him, sorry.
But it is outdoor rec related, so for this tourism management grant, the city would like to apply for wayfinding within the boulevard. The boulevard was completed like 2019, is that right? They did a great job, it's really beautiful, but maybe as you can attest, it's a little bit confusing, the different trails that intersect. So this grant, the project has a total cost of around $18,500 at the moment. The grant allows for an ask up to $20,000 with a 20% match. So what we'd be asking was up to $5,000. We imagine that we'd be asking around $3,700, but we haven't gotten all the costs back yet. And so, first of all, hello, I'm Talita. I don't know if I've met all of you. Grant writer in economic development. And so when this grant came up, it was really exciting. The webinar that they put on was really great, and they actually used the gravel guide as an example of like great marketing in Colorado. So that was like pretty cool to see.
Was anybody able to attend that webinar? No. So just kind of an overall explanation in your package, you'll see the actual information about the tourism management grant. This is the Colorado Tourism Office opportunity. As Talitha said, the maximum grant amount is $20,000, so we can apply for up to $20,000. We have been looking, I had mentioned this like a month or so back. Don, you wouldn't have got that, but anyway, so trying to identify eligible projects within the community that we can apply for this grant. And so we put out, we reached out to the community to find out if anybody had any ideas on what we could use this money for, if there were any already in progress or identified projects. And so what we came up with was the informational kiosks that Wally had talked about, and then there were some others that are specific to the Boulevard Edition. So there's 2 sitting benches, wildlife signs, a kiosk map, directional signage, informational signage for bathrooms, an ADA trail, the picnic area, the wildlife viewing stations, river access, etc., and then adding QR codes to any of that signage. So as Talitha mentioned, it comes out to about $18,500. Originally, what was identified as the matching grant for that, as the match for that, was a GOCO grant. What Talitha found out in the meantime, though, is that we cannot supplement this grant with other grants, other grant money.
That'd be state grants, right?
Right. So GOCO and CTO monies cannot work together. So we have to, if we were to apply for the entire $20,000, we would need $5,000 match. As it is, the budget has been developed, correct?
Yeah, I have the budget right now. I'm still waiting for concrete costs.
Right, so we're looking about $18,500. And so the ask is, since this is a tourism grant, if the tourism board would be willing to pony up with the match that we would need for this grant.
So what's the actual grant for again?
Tourism management. So the examples, it's the Colorado Tourism Office Tourism Management Grant. And the eligible projects are tourism product development, tourism workforce development, tourism-related strategic planning, tourism research and infrastructure that directly enhances the visitor experience through increased access or engagement, for example, wayfinding, educational or interpretive signage, educational kiosks, river access, trail maintenance. So this would fall under infrastructure. And then, like Marty said, a couple of kiosks that have a map of the Boulevard Edition, the loop itself with all the trails, a welcome sign, information about where bathrooms are, where Safeway is, where the welcome center is, where downtown shops are. And then my favorite part is the trail intersection signage because I still get lost. So, but then also a Trinidad area trails tourism booklet. So this budget also includes design of a trail guide booklet, more similar to the way Raton has theirs. Versus like, I mean, I have costs for the gravel guide, but not necessarily at this level, rather than have you all seen the one in Raton? It was designed in-house, so it's just.
Didn't bring it with me to the guide, don't have it, but Raton does have a trail guide, and it's this size. And so it's very comprehensive, every page, it's like our gravel guide.
It has easy.
And this is just on the boulevard?
Yes.
This is not,
This
Oh,
one,
this
the
is
other
the town.
boulevard.
but this would include the loophole?
No.
No.
Well, the trail booklet, I mean,
Oh, the trail booklet would
Would
include the
include
wormhole.
but the map that we want on the kiosks would be the boulevard and downtown. I mean, that has yet to be designed, so absolutely any feedback about what should be included.
So I have a question about the directional signage.
Yeah.
You know, we talked a little bit about just the need for better signage
Mhm.
in the community in general.
Mhm.
And it would be nice if there were signs like off of Highway 12 about how to get there. Because I mean, if you don't know how to get there, you can't find it unless you happen to sit on a lot across from Safeway from the river trail,
Yes.
right? And I think that also like the wormhole, the trails that show where wormhole is are very beat up. And it would be nice for us to create a comprehensive signage plan so that if it's paid for by the grant, that's fine, but that it's part of a cohesive looking master sort of way.
Master plan for all of them.
Yeah, master plan for all of them.
The issue,
My understanding is this just for
the boulevard.
Boulevard. That's
Yeah.
what I thought.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is
So
just for
the issue that we have is this grant is due March the 1st.
Yeah.
And I kind of tried to stress that continuously, like we
I
gotta
love
get
the
this,
boulevard, so
Yeah.
I'm.
we need to get this going because she's got to put her grant together.
No,
I get all the letters of support and stuff, so absolutely, like, and wayfinding has absolutely been talked about,
Mayor, isn't there a signage cohesive program, like anything that you can do in the city, or is it need to be updated?
the 2011 wayfinding plan.
I'm not really sure, I remember seeing a plan that said, you know, how the typo is
You're
supposed to
talking about like an
be.
ordinance or something like that to specify signage,
Yeah.
types of signs,
Yeah.
there is a sign ordinance that we can
Yeah.
have.
So I was driving through Canyon City the other day, because I drive through there a lot. And they have great signage, and I took some photos of some of their signage, if I can find them. I probably can't because now I'm on them, right? And I'm not super patient. But they went a little overboard with signage. They literally have like a sign on almost every block. But
And that's our issue too,
Oh, here's
over
one.
signage,
Yeah.
it looks metal, it's
Oh.
definitely,
Yeah, especially the corner over here,
And that's-
really, there's so much
But they
signage.
have these big signs and they're very consistent and they're exactly the same, but they have a point like, I mean, this one tells the library and the Center for Performing Arts one, and then they have another one that says, here's access to the railroad. And I mean, sometimes they're going a little overboard, like here's the access to, you know, something that's a government office that no tourist is ever gonna care about. But they look nice.
But
I mean,
maybe
here, I'll show you.
but maybe one sign takes the place of 5.
Yeah, and if you put them in really strategic places, the nice thing about them in Canyon City is as you're driving through the highway, they put them almost on every block, but pointing in that direction, like this is what you're gonna find if you turn this way or this way. It also marks parking, and they look really nice. I was sort of out of my windshield, it was freezing cold that day. I went out of my car to take one.
and
Yeah, no,
the-
I like these signs too, I've seen them, I think Frisco has kind of signs like that too.
Yeah,
and the last time that the CDOT Revitalizing Main Street grant was available, the one that we applied for the Riverwalk lighting, they also, offered wayfinding as, something that that grant referred to.
City council developed a program at one time,
There's a 2000.
and my wife sat on that, and they did a wayfinding program on that.
Yeah, and so a couple of those signs are up. Last I heard, maybe the sheen wasn't the correct, like highway level paint, wasn't reflective enough.
It was done by a company here in Trinidad is what it was done. It wasn't done by an outside company that probably, that's what they do.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right.
Yeah.
So those were created, and since 2011, some of those places have moved, the police station has moved, is the one I can think of. And so, in trying to apply for that grant, for that project, for wayfinding, it became kind of muddled, plus that particular grant was more about pedestrian and cyclists and rather than cars and highway.
so when this grant is due the 1st, when do you find out and when does it have to be completed?
They get back pretty quickly, the tourism office.
So,
Oh, even sooner, I have it.
It's in that packet.
so what,
Yeah, yeah.
so what
and
you
they
need
have
from
it.
us is the commitment of of that.
To 5,000, but probably less. Yeah,
And is
would be
that on a
less.
regular meeting, Marty,
Yes,
for that?
it is.
Because they do need a 20%.
I don't see it. That's why I was looking for it.
When do the funds have to be spent?
Well, it would start
Oh,
May
it's
to
not.
May. So
We
May.
could add it.
You're adding it.
Oh, I thought it was on the second page.
It is, it's
Oh,
on the
it is.
second page.
It's B, it's 5.
The
It's there on the regular meeting, so
It is.
we can go from there.
projects would need to be completed by May 2023.
Okay, so there's time to then also maybe work on some of the signage that's more consistent.
But this signage is just for the
Boulevard.
Yeah, we're talking
boulevard,
about
not for
boulevard signage.
anything else.
But some of the signage is still out on the street level. So there's some in the park right itself, and then there's some that's directional to get to the park, is that correct?
I mean, in front of Safeway.
In front of Safeway, but that's where the park, the boulevard starts, so it has no signage anywhere.
But how about
It's
like
just-
from
this is-
Highway 12?
But this is just for the boulevard,
Just
that
the
isn't,
boulevard.
if we wanted signage on the highway or anything else downtown, that is something separate. This
Yeah.
one is strictly for the boulevard, that's my understanding, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so
But
we
shouldn't it
can't,
be consistent with the rest of the city signage? That's just my question.
Well,
Well,
consistent
once we
design,
get
it
there,
hasn't been designed yet.
Yeah,
so
and so if
absolutely.
you have a year before it has to be completed, there's time to potentially consistently design some.
right, but we have to
Yeah.
agree to commit to this grant
Yeah,
immediately.
yeah, that's fine, but I'm just wondering about what the timeline is so that, you know, if there is some signage, direction of how it should be completed, that we can have that time. So if we hire this new graphic designer to create what signs should look like for the city and give you some design guidelines for those boulevard, things that aren't going to be ordered for another 6 months, then there's a time zone, there's time in there after we approve, yes, we'll do
Right.
it.
And if
Does
you're
the city
interested
have
in-
a, Mr. Mayor, does the city have a plan of the wayfinding sign?
We don't, that we're not, that's something that we don't do, that would be up to, I guess, whoever does the wayfinding signs. If that's
ci-
this
but-
department,
Uh-huh.
you guys would be doing that design.
I'm happy to send you the 2011 wayfinding plan, the most recent plan.
My wife sat on a grant that the city created a group to do some wayfinding, and I think it was around 2011.
Yeah, there was
It's
a
a
wayfinding sign thing that came way back.
Yeah, and my wife had sat on that, and they had come up with ways of promoting the downtown area in a wayfinding sign.
They put a couple of them up, you can see it on Cape Carson.
Right.
And I'm not sure where, what department.
There was one on
or
Santa Fe Trail,
or
I
what
think.
board or commission was assigned that project, I think. So that would be something to look at.
Yeah, and that's a priority for the city, absolutely. We didn't end up pursuing
could
that
s-
grant because it was more costly.
Right, and I could see where Dawn is coming from as to if we had a uniformed signage for wayfinding.
Absolutely, we all want to be on the same
Yeah.
page, yeah.
I just wanted to know the timeline, so I think if we can maybe push that forward a little bit, because it's a big factor here in town. If you don't know where things are, it's really hard to find them.
And
It really is.
they're definitely, they have a wayfinding component in the transportation study, not as detailed as the wayfinding plan, but they've recognized it as a priority as well. Yeah, so this particular grant would be for kiosks, like a map of the boulevard. And we want that to be consistent, we want to use that imagery that THK came up with for the Trinidad trails and greenways, that really beautiful, like, reminiscent of the national park, at Fisher's Peak.
Sure.
And I want it to definitely be cohesive with the wormhole and all of the trails.
Okay, thank you.
And then, I've got plenty of examples too of, I found a couple of pages of the town thinking guide. This is just a copy, so it's not the right size, but it was designed in-house, so that's the level of design that they have. But they do have it listed as easy, moderate, strenuous, and the gravel guide itself is really nice that they have the elevation, which we have in a lot of our hikes as well, so I think that would be really great to incorporate. And again, it has to be designed, and then the design has to be approved by the Colorado Tourism Office. so.
Great.
There's plenty of design to be had.
Oh, that's
Are they-
interesting, so it has, I'm sorry, but that's interesting, so it has to be approved by CTO after we, like,
Yeah, and their logo has to be part of it too.
Is the boulevard done, Mr. Mayor? Is it completed?
No, there's still some components that have to be, from what I understand.
And so this would
So this'll
also be
just, right,
like because it never really got a ribbon cutting, and so I know Julie Knudsen really wants to celebrate that new addition. And so this would also include, the police department just got that ice blaster, and so they've just been waiting for, the weather to warm up, and so they've talked about as soon as the weather is warmer, they'll take this new ice blaster, which is like a power washer that freezes it, and then like,
Just lifts it.
yeah, so it'll get that graffiti up in the area.
Good.
oh, wow, nice.
Yeah, so that was a pretty big tool that they got, and they're really excited to use. So that'll really help the boulevard, and then like a ribbon cutting and a big, it's too bad they're not here anymore, like a, sort of a campaign to get people's Google reviews up there, because there's maybe like 5 reviews for that trailhead, but Sarah was the one who put that trailhead on Google to begin with, so.
Yeah.
Is there, this is an off question, Mayor, but is there, some sort of, discipline for, anyone caught graffitiing in the city?
There is, I mean, because that's damaging of whether it's city property or personal property.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, there's something against that.
Yeah, so I mean, what the police department would like is, for people to take photos so that they can collect them.
And I've recommended to the city or to the police department that if a resident of the community finds graffiti on their own property, that they can contact the city for removal. However, they've got to make sure that there's a waiver that, because there could be some damage because of that piece of equipment. It's high powered or whatever, but it will remove the graffiti, so.
From like concrete and stuff, we wouldn't use it on brick, don't worry.
Okay.
thank you.
Used on rocks, like up on Simpson's Rest, does he do it there?
I don't know, I know that, they've used other methods, more
Castle
I don't
wash.
think I would say it's the collection of the, that you guys, I'm sure.
Hey, any other questions for Talitha?
No.
Good, thank you.
Great. Then hopefully we can get it through this week. That'd be great.
Certified folder rack design.
So-
Card design, I'm sorry.
Initially, the subject came up by side when she mentioned that there was nothing in the airports. We didn't have any kind of rack cards or brochures or any kind of materials in any of the airports. And it kind of led to, what are we gonna do? What do we wanna put up there? So I researched the costs of doing our visitor guide, and it's not something that we wanna put in there. It's, first of all, our guide is very costly to produce. And the spaces that are allowed by certified folder would cost us, like triple the amount of what a rack card would cost us to put in those areas where the brochure holders. So we talked about developing a rack card, and so not having our graphic designer yet, that's the next item. I kind of put this together so we can kind of move forward with it. If you want to hold on to it until you have a graphic designer, then you're welcome to, but I just kind of wanted to give you an idea of something that we could use. So put this together for you.
It's a lot of good work, I know that must have been a lot of hours, thank you.
But just personally, I like that. I think it's a good idea.
The only thing is, you know that picture that's on the cover of our booklet? I'd like to see that right there, if that's
tried it.
possible. Did you try it?
I tried it. You have, because of the space that it's
Uh-huh,
allowed and the size
Uh-huh.
and the background colors, it isn't conducive to this. It isn't big enough. You would have to bring it down so small you can't even see what's on there.
Okay.
And the only thing else that I would like to add, just as a thought process, is that we know where Trinidad's at, not everybody knows, and I've often thought of, because of our arts culture, is to have like
Denver, Colorado Springs, Trinidad, the heart of everything, and then Santa Fe.
Yep.
Just so that people have an idea, if they're coming into the state and they pick this up in Trinidad, or they pick this up in Colorado Springs, or if we were to put this in Santa Fe, just like we're in the heart of, between Santa Fe and Denver, or something that's kind of, I don't know, just like, cause we know where Trinidad is.
Just like the I-25 corridor.
Yeah,
Like a map.
Right,
just like the I-25.
I would make a suggestion that we find our graphic designer and do this, because this laundry list of things to do is fantastic, but that belongs more on like a QR code that you could link to it and then see all the stuff to do. And this should be really graphic and really pretty with maybe that map to show people where it is, because all you're doing here is grabbing somebody's attention that there's this town. And when you look at those things, you only really have this top part to see that grabs your attention, and then you pull it out and you look at the rest of the information. So if you're looking at those, brochure guides, so you really need this top part to be.
Like with that one picture that I.
Yeah, with a picture or with something very catchy with whatever our logo is and whatever that branding is, but that's where a graphic designer really comes in and makes this, and then this list of stuff to do is kind of awesome.
Yeah.
So
it could be on a QR code.
Yeah, it could be on a QR code, and that doesn't necessarily belong on these, because these are just to get people to sort of think, oh, this place exists, maybe I should check it out, and then they do additional research or find out additional information.
Okay, well, then the next one is your graphic designer RFP.
Thanks for putting together though, I love this, I might use this on my board at the hotel and write down things that everybody.
This would be great in the
Yeah.
hotels for people to see what there is
Yeah.
to do here, though. I mean,
Yeah.
just this little checklist
Yeah,
for
it's
your
a great
staff.
check, yeah.
Would be fantastic.
How many of these did you print out?
Just enough for you guys to
Okay.
look at.
Okay, great. Okay.
So, the city requires that whenever you're hiring an outside contract company or firm or individual to do services for the tourism board, you have to put out an RFP. So I designed the RFP, don't know if you had time to look at it.
I did.
But I had Audra look at it, and so it is concise with what's required. So if you are, I'll have to change the dates on it, of course, this was for the last meeting. So that you can get this out and get some proposals in.
I think it's very good. I read it.
Thanks, Marty, for doing that.
You're welcome. So we'll, I think it's on the
We can
On the
move
agenda?
forward. We can move forward with that.
How long does it take to build a RFP, or how?
Depends on what the response is.
Usually give a timeline for people to respond, it's the best thing to do.
Yeah, so the responses were requested by February 24th, which is, basically I gave them a month. That's generally the amount of time that's requested, so I'll change those dates.
Right.
And the date could be 1 month from probably tomorrow.
Sounds good.
And then where do those land? Do they just land on like the jobs board, or how do they get pushed out so people know they're looking for them?
Audra has a recommended list that we'll be
Sending them?
sending it to, yeah.
Ad for New Legends magazine.
So when Mr. Wharton presented at the last meeting, he requested a kind of an exorbitant amount of support for his private business. And the board had rejected that proposal, and instead had suggested that an ad be purchased for the magazines. So I inquired of Mr. Wharton as to what his advertising costs were, so what you have in your packet is pricing for future magazines. And these are produced 4 times a year, so quarterly. So you have the sizes of each of the ads and the cost associated with the size.
So like for instance, the Trailblazer would be
It's a half-page ad and
And
it'd
it's
be
$780 per quarter.
$780 per quarter,
For
for 4
four different
quarters.
signage.
And is that's just, that would be a $120 discount per quarter, right?
Yes, that's what it says. That includes the discount.
That
Right.
includes.
All that is the
That,
discount.
there's not an additional discount,
Not
that
additional.
is the discount, that is with the
Because,
discount.
because it's only printed quarterly, you can't opt for $300 a month, because he's not
Right,
printing
he's
it every
not doing
Right.
it 300 a
Right,
month.
so the Explorer is a fourth of the page at $400 a month. So, okay. That's on the next one, right?
Yes, that's on the regular meeting to vote on. Do
All
you
right.
wanna have any other discussion as to what size you'd like to do, or
Didn't we already say a half page?
We had talked about a half a page.
a half a page?
Mhm.
Okay. And that'll be something that'll be put in front of your graphic designer as well.
Okay.
I'm unfortunately gonna have to leave, but, I guess in reference to there's enough of you for the next meeting. I'm in favor of the other two items that are on there, from a work session point of view, not from a meeting point of view.
Westward advertising.
So I received an email from Westward. They have actually been producing a lot of articles on Trinidad. It's a Denver publication. And it's the demographic that it reaches is a younger demographic, probably like between 30s and younger. But it's growing in size, and so he reached out and wanted to know if you were interested in doing any kind of advertising. So there's the packet in front of you as to whether or not you would like to advertise in Westward. You have the circulation. It's mostly Denver area, Denver, Boulder area where it is distributed.
He didn't send you a copy of it, Marty?
Of the magazine?
Yeah.
No.
They're big,
I've seen it. They're a
they're
big
about this
magazine.
big and they're free.
Uh-huh.
They're in those like newspaper things everywhere. They're very widely circulated. I advertise with them a little bit for our business, or I have, and they've done articles on us as well. They're very kind of hip, but they do advertise a ton of like marijuana or organizations, which I guess isn't so
That's
incongruent
really
with Colorado or with Trinidad. But you know, a lot of music, a lot of alternative music and things. And I mean, it is widely publicized. So you know, I do think marketing in Denver, because we are getting a lot of those gravel guides and things like that, is not a bad idea.
And we're getting that younger crowd also.
Yeah,
I'm working here in the industry that's the marijuana industry.
it would be worth looking at like 5280, which is a nicer magazine, but probably a little bit more expensive, but might be a better demographic for the outdoor recreation.
And 5280's done some articles on Trinidad.
As well, yes.
Yeah.
And kind of taking a look at them and deciding, I mean, Westward gets printed every week, so I don't think there's a timeline on this that has to be done right away. I think we could look at the graphic design and look at the costs. I don't know, what do you think, Marty? You talk to them.
It is, we don't advertise to that demographic a lot. So it might be something you want to put in your toolbox.
Yeah.
A type of magazine that is in that area of the state, and 5280 is as well. So there's
Well,
options.
And the thing of it is to reach all age groups. And this would be an age group. 5280 would be an age group, you know, so, and that's basically what the money is set up for, is to advertise outside the 50-mile radius.
The
I know
other
if you
thing,
guys have not been advertising, like you said, that age group, like you're saying. the demographic, and I think that, to be honest with you, that is the up and coming demographics that I think you guys need to target.
Well, even with the gravel grind and Wally's comedy and the Blues Fest, all these different groups that we're targeting is.
We do have a lot to offer now for that, age group.
Right.
The Blues Fest and the comedy and whatnot, I think particularly fit very well with Westward and their
Yeah,
demographic.
the Blues Fest does advertise in Westford.
They do.
Yeah, they do.
And, so I
So
think,
does Artocade.
Yeah, we paid, yeah.
So
I
it's
think
just
there's
a
a lot of
difference.
congruency with some of the quirkiness of Trinidad and this magazine.
Yeah.
And they also do some geo-targeting,
They do.
with the ads, which might be worth looking at, specifically. And there's geo-fencing is what they're calling it, so like as people drive a certain direction, then they get these ads that pop up,
Oh, I see.
and how they work, and they're doing it like as a package, I believe, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I think we should definitely look at this once we have our graphic designer,
There you go.
so there's consistency.
Presentation of 2022 council approved budget.
So this is the council approved budget for tourism funds. You'll see the revenues, the expenditures, operating transfers. I don't know why I have lottery fund in there, so disregard that page. It just must have been on the back of that page anyway. So your tourism funds are allocated for the Welcome Center, and there's expenses for the Welcome Center. It's also allocated to tourism specifically, as well as the trolley. So wanted you to see what those numbers were for 2022. This is the amount of money that you have to expend. Your lodging tax receipts are, for 2022, our budget is $358,000. There's additional revenues in there that include the Visitor Welcome Center Travel Shop. There's miscellaneous revenue, and I don't know where that comes from, but it's in there. And then there's the transfer in from the general fund of, I think it's $50,000. Total expenses, or a total budget for the Welcome Center is $147,010. Total budget for tourism is $236,000. And total budget for the trolley was $30,659.
Marty, does anywhere in this, does it show what the reserve is?
No.
I didn't see it, that's why I asked. Is there any way you could get that for us, the reserve, what's in the reserve?
I'm surprised that, because in all of the major budget.
It would be in there.
There's always a,
The
reserve.
reserve.
Yeah, I'm surprised that they don't want that in there.
Yeah, it's not. But I'll find that out, Tom, and then send it to you.
Okay, thank you. Everybody okay with that? Van purchase, I finally got the information from Kim as to the agencies that are out there, and what I did with the van is I went to Dodge, Chevrolet, and Ford, and I'm having Ford give me Dodge, and I kind of want, I told them the things that we would like, with handicap accessible, air conditioning, and Marty, you had mentioned a PA system maybe in it. Kind of some of the things that we would want built into it. So they're putting that together that I could follow the spec sheet that they gave us as to for making the bid for it. They did give us an example of a bid that I think the water department did out for a truck. So I'm just trying to get that together to make it as a bid. And then we can then go either to that government agency or both. We could include that, and the one that I thought was in there that we could go to was Williams Chevrolet out of Colorado Springs. The rest of them, were just kind of like, places where they sell different blocks of vehicles, different types of vehicles that are on hand. So, once I get that all together, I'll bring it and everybody can look at it and then we can see where we go from there.
Then you can start the bid process.
Right, okay?
Okay.
So that's where I'm at with that.
What's the van for?
It's, since we have the trolley and it's downtown, but the van is possibly could be used for taking outside, like we bring people on the weekends. We did it last year. Was it last year that we
Year
did it?
before.
Year before. We use it on Friday nights to make runs to the motels, to bring them downtown to eat.
Okay.
And I think there's gonna be down the road, there's gonna be a lot of use for it. You know, we can, maybe do something going to Monument Lake or going, you know, just different places, you know. So I think it would be a good thing to spend on.
I think it's not just for the city to have one too, we could lend it to the city. Because they don't have one, right?
Well, on several occasions, we have officials that come down from like the tourism office or the state government officials or something, and we'd like to give tours of the town, you know, take them different places. And it's just not conducive on the trolley.
The trolley, yeah.
It has limitations because of its size. So there's a lot of instances. We also used it for the Blues Fest, when we had Blues Fest at Central Park. And we were using the trolley to transport people back and forth to the hotels. So there's going to be occasions where we need something like this.
I think as we're going down the road, like 5 years ago, that there wasn't, but there's so much more going on now. Even with the bicycle, the Rad Fest, and stuff like that, there's.
Yeah. The Comedy Fest, as backup maybe for the Comedy Fest. So he does, and the Spaghetti Festival. So we do back and forth to Raton. Sometimes the train's not on time, so that kind of puts a kibosh to the whole schedule because the train doesn't arrive in time, so we could use the van. So for instances like that. And it's a good marketing tool.
Well, the other thing too is, you know, up and coming, you know, Fisher's Peak is gonna be a big
And there's that.
destination point, and, as a matter of fact, by this summer sometime, they're, talking about an additional 7 miles of trails over what they've already done this year. And by next year, of course, that's different, would be a Trail to the Peak, but that.
Right, and we
because
can't
they
use the
get-
trolley for everything like that. It
Sure.
would be nice to have a little event, you know.
Yeah, and the idea is to get it wrapped, so we can do some more advertising on it.
Yeah.
Other items of discussion, does anybody have anything else?
I do. These 2 ads that I put next to your places is for the True West magazine and the Raton Visitors Guide. These are the 2 that I mentioned earlier are due this Friday and then the 17th, and we did not have time to get the RFP out or for the graphic designer yet. And these were decided by the board that they needed, that you were gonna go in these 2 magazines earlier. I didn't hear a response from anybody except for Camilla, and she had advised that I move forward with the design of these 2 ads. So I put the design in front of you. This one is for True West. And then this one, which will be a smaller, it's only a half a page that goes in the Raton Visitor Guide. So this one is a smaller one. It won't be this size.
I just have a question, maybe a rude question. We always put the Bloom House on, and they don't give tours anymore of that theme. That is really, and I've had people come in and say, where is this place and where can I tour it? Because we're always putting it on material.
There are private tours for the Bloom House.
There are? I didn't know that.
Yeah, you can call and schedule tours for the Bloom
Okay,
House.
but the people aren't calling, but I just, because we do it so much, I love this building, but we do it so much, and it's just, I'd rather have a picture of her little gift shop in the back of a house than something that they can't go to immediately. Do you see what I mean? It just.
I do. It's just the outstanding architecture that draws
It is,
attention.
it's beautiful, don't get me wrong, I know. I just telling people as a merchant downtown, it's just very hard to explain to them that,
So maybe what we need to do is we need to get something from from Al, letting them know that that they can call for specific tours.
And maybe that, you know, something, or even put a little, yeah, you know. And it's a beautiful building, but it's just.
I would like to see something else other than Kit Carson up on the upper part. Whether it be the BACA or even the inside maybe of the Mitchell. So he's a renowned artist, you know, and I think something of his in there.
There's a lot of.
Well,
Is it because
just so you keep in mind that this is True West magazine, and so the theme of the magazine is Western.
Right.
And
I
he's-
like Kit Carson, so I'm
and
gonna
Mitchell
put
and,
my.
and the Mitchell, you can go in there and you can get something True West.
Or the horse
Right.
that's right out here, the new horse that's
Okay.
done would be a nice change.
Yeah, I like Kit Carson, so I'm.
the question I had, Marty, is the reason why they're not giving tours other than by appointment only, is that,
Because the
is it because of
furniture's
COVID?
gone.
Furniture's gone, okay. I don't know if it's because of COVID or what the reason is.
Well, it did start with
So
COVID.
where is the furniture?
Colorado History has all the
Yeah.
furniture
Yeah.
in Denver.
But I
It
do
was
think,
removed a while back because there was because the structure had been compromised because of the earthquakes that we had had. So they were doing, testing of the settling of the building and how the building had been compromised. So History Colorado came down and took the furniture out.
Is there a possibility that furniture could come back?
I doubt it.
I doubt it.
That
But
really angers me, not
It
only
does.
this particular
everybody.
museum, but there's other museum pieces, other than the Mitchell.
Right.
Get taken out of Trinidad that should be locked.
That, and I agree with you. I was very frustrated with the Bloomhouse and the Baca House because throughout the summer, and I know it's rough times, but the grounds were horrible looking.
They
I mean,
don't have-
you look in front of the back,
They just don't have the help.
but we need to call the state and say, hey, this is on our main street, and this is not. We're advertising it, and it is not very appealing to anybody. What is your, what can we do about this? I mean, it's not our responsibility. You don't want to be rude, but
It's,
they're
owned by the
not
state.
doing anything.
But if we don't tell the state that they need to do something, then they won't.
I know, but
There's an
Very
avenue that I
hard.
could maybe go to try to maybe begin to push that.
I just think that it's something very important to Trinidad, and the upkeep is just as important as having the facilities.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
agree.
and I know that whole grounds has been kept by volunteer work for the last 5 to 7 years, and I think they've lost that.
We all lost our volunteers during
Right.
COVID.
Jimmy Kucha, he took care of that thing
Yeah.
for probably 7 or 8 years, and it was beautiful. But and that's the thing is if they did have the volunteers, the grounds would look the way they do.
And I remember when Kirby was here, because that weeded area right in front of the Bloom House, they were supposed to come in and grass seed that whole place for her. She left, it never materialized. And
But-
this was after COVID, and she was still waiting for them to come down because she said it was approved and everything, but it's never been done. When she left, everything, I don't know.
But the one thing, Phil, is maybe if you talk to somebody I had went to talk to the new manager that's there now about the tourism board sponsoring 1 or 2 days out of the week. And we would pay for the amount of people that would go in there on that. And that's still kind of in the works with me and her. She was gonna find out what the state felt about that. So we wanted to maybe make a Friday or Saturday free.
I wonder how the
They charge,
interaction between the tourism and the State Historical Society,
Mhm.
if there's any kind of collaboration that they
Right.
can work together on.
I would think that there is,
There should
because
be.
in almost every town in Colorado, you have sites that are run by the Historic Society, and they're really well maintained and they're well staffed and whatnot. And so, are we neglected for what's the missing link?
Well,
What's
one
the
of the things that I was
missing
gonna mention is that I could start off by contacting our state legislators. A lot of times they can push that. However, the big thing is that we would need to put together a plan would have to be put together as to how we're going to
Help
help
them.
and help them
I'll-
to maintain that.
I'll go back and see the manager, and as to what we had talked about when I went last year. And it was gonna be set up for this 2022. And she was gonna check with her boss as to, and I had made a proposal to her of us maybe sponsoring Trinidad Tourism Board maybe 1 or 2 days out of the week.
But I agree with that, but
You know.
there still is a lot of work as far as groundkeeping that needs to be done. I mean, I don't, if,
But maybe there's something going on that we don't know nothing about, you know, so.
You know, that
Right.
grounds could, you know, that group that does with the planting here in Trinidad, they have that
Mhm.
community.
yeah,
garden.
yeah, yeah.
Contact them to see if they would be willing to do something to maintain that.
That's
during
not a
the
bad
summer.
idea to maintain it, you know,
Yeah,
purgatory,
because
purgatory.
they do have an area in the back where they did have gardens at one time, you
Yeah.
know,
You can't
vegetable
rely on
gardens.
just volunteers to do that, though. I mean, you need somebody
Oh, I
who's
agree with
paid,
that.
who's in
Paid,
charge.
okay, position, but I know Jimmy did it for years, I mean,
But he was paid
he
also,
was paid to do it, so.
so, and you know, maybe they